Good afternoon, I guess it is. I'm Mike Register, the Director of the Division of Water Supply Planning and Assessment, and I'm here today with Victor Castro, the Director of Regulatory Services. And what we'd like to do is bring the first of what we hope to be a series of informational items to hopefully clarify some misstatements that have been in the media lately that you may have heard. And our first one today that we're going to talk about is on water use measurement and reporting here at the district. And we're going to start it off with Victor Castro talking about the requirements of our consumptive use permitting programs in regard to water use measurement.
Thank you, Mike. All right, before we get started talking about water use measurement and reporting, the first thing we need to do is talk about what requires an individual consumptive use permit. Any water user that needs 100,000 gallons per day or more requires a consumptive use permit regardless of the well size. Also, if they have the potential to withdraw more than 1 million gallons per day, regardless of their well size or regardless of their actual use, they need a consumptive use permit. And finally, any wells with a diameter of 6 inches or more, or surface water intake pipe or pipes that have a cumulative diameter of 6 inches or more require a water use permit regardless of their water use. Okay, now that we have established what requires a consumptive use permit, the next and first question is what permittees have to measure their water use? And the short answer to that is all of them. Regardless of well size and regardless of actual use, all of the permittees have to measure their water use. That's a requirement on their permit. Okay, what about what permittees have to actually report their water use to the district? The answer to that is every permittee with an allocation greater than 100,000 gallons per day must report twice a year their water use using a form we call EM50, which can be submitted electronically. Once we receive that information, the district conducts a QA process to ensure that the data is of high quality. And it's also important to know that meters that are used to measure this water use have a requirement to be calibrated periodically to be sure that the data is accurate. Now, what about permittees that are not, they don't have an allocation of 100,000 gallons per day or more? If they're below, they're still required to measure their water, but they keep it on file in case it is needed later on. All right, what does that mean? The total permitted groundwater allocation, as you can see, the vast majority, in fact 96% of the groundwater allocation in the district is made up of permits that have an allocation of 0.1 MGD or more. And those all require to be measured and submitted to the district every 6 months. And only 4% of the groundwater allocations that are less than 0.1 MGDs, and that makes of 4%. And so this gives a big picture of what do we receive related to water use associated with consumptive use permits. Now, what about water use that is not associated with a consumptive use permit? Mike Register is going to take that to give the full picture of the water use in the district.
Thank you, Victor. So as Victor said, what about the other uses that don't require an individual consumptive use permit? There are things out there like domestic self-supply, where you have an individual well supplying a homestead. Sub-threshold agriculture, it may be small agricultural operation that doesn't have to trip one of those use thresholds for an individual permit. And even some other sub-thresholds, things like a convenience store that may have its own water supply, small RV parks, things like that. While they aren't required to get an individual consumptive use permit, these uses are authorized through our general permit by rule category. And they also have to get a well construction permit. So we know where these wells are, we know what their sizes are, and we can utilize that and other information for our water supply planning group to step in and basically fill in the gap between what water use is permitted and measured and the other water use that occurs at the district. And so the annual water use survey measures all water use within the district for each year. We've been doing it since 1978, and we do historic water use by category and by county. We also track population and per capita. Where do we get this information from? Well, thankfully, the large majority of it is through that EN50 data, the water use forms that are reported to the district through the CUP program. But we also cross-check and QA these with monthly operating reports from FDEP for the public supplies. We use information from the Florida Department of Ag and Consumer Services and their FSED model to help determine what kind of water use we expect from those sub-threshold agricultural operations. And we also look at the FDEP annual reuse inventory to get an idea how much reclaimed water is being used. So how does this fit into the whole water use picture? As you can see by this pie chart, the EN50 reported data that we get from our permittees makes up 86% of the water use that we estimate in the district there in 2015. And only 14% has to be estimated through these methods with the water supply planning group. So the vast, vast majority of it is actual permitted individual permits that measure their water use and report it to the district. Just some information that we get regarding these. This shows the breakdown for the 2015 water use summary that we put out last year. And you can see that public supply is 54%. Agriculture is the second biggest user at 21% last year. And that's by no coincidence that these are where our cost share programs are targeted toward water savings and water quality improvement, the two biggest use categories that we have here at the district. This gives you some information showing water use over time. So this is information from the annual water use survey, and this is on our website now, I believe. Over time, this is the last 30 years. Public supply is the blue stack bar at the bottom, and then agriculture is followed by that in red, and then the other uses on top. And you can see that in tracking the water use since 2000, 2001, it's pretty well leveled up except for a few spike years that may have been really dry years and even tapered off in some extent, even though the population during that time went up by about 1 million people. So, thanks to the water conservation efforts, not only by the district, but by the public supply utilities and by agriculture, thanks to the increase in use of reclaimed water, we've been able to manage the water use and keep it down even with this growing population. Finally, I hope that our presentation today has clarified some of the misstatements out there regarding water use and water use measurement in the district, including this guy holding up air vents like they're water use pipes and saying that we're not required to monitor pipes or several pipes that are smaller than 8 inches in diameter. We do require our permittees to measure their water use. We do monitor all water use within our district. I would also like to take this time to address a few other issues that have come up, like the mischaracterization of staff simply doing their job of constantly updating data, updating analysis, and updating models so that we have the most up-to-date information on which to base our district decisions. And finally, a statement that we need bright and imaginative people working collaboratively to solve water issues, insinuating that we don't already have that. But we do have that. In fact, just within the groups that are responsible for the regulatory and water supply planning programs, we have dedicated employees with over 2,000 years of collective experience just at the Water Management District. These employees, in some cases, have dedicated their entire professional careers to the district's mission of environmental protection. And contrary to some recent statements, the district's institutional knowledge is still here and is being transferred over to the new faces as they are added to our workforce and their fresh perspectives are blended with our career staffers for an average of 14 years of district experience to produce as talented and professional of a workforce that can be found anywhere in our industry. So I ask that when you read or hear statements by individuals that happen to disagree with the results of the state-of-the-art science that is being produced by the district, that you remember our dedicated staff that have devoted their careers to ensuring that everyone has an adequate supply of water to meet their needs and the needs of future generations, while ensuring that our environment is well protected for those future generations to also enjoy. Thank you, and we'll take any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Mike. Any questions or comments? Miriam?
This is really interesting, Mike.
about a day ago, and then 2 days ago, and a day ago, I tweeted. There was something from St. John's Water Management, and I tweeted that, and then I retweeted yesterday, and I said I'm very proud of Team St. John's River Water Management District. #teamwork. However, when I did that, and I'm not saying it that I'm kind of bragging colleagues here, but just from bottom of my heart, I'm very proud of our teamwork that exists within the team, St. John's River Water Management. And I feel since Dr. Shortell joined us, that teamwork has even gone up to another level. I've never seen you saying these things, and that usually you're the tough guy. What has got you to this? What has got you to say this?
Well, you know,
Be careful what you say. I'm a new Twitter.
I disabled my Twitter account while I was working on some of these presentations. But what it is I work day in, day out with these staff, and I see their dedication on a daily basis and how passionate they are about protecting our environment and still meeting that mission of ensuring that that water supply is available for everyone and future generations. And so, you know, when I read and I hear things that are mischaracterizations of the hard work that they're putting in and trying to show one side, it bothers me. And I take it personally on their behalf, because they don't get to see it, you don't get to see it, unfortunately, but I see it on a daily basis, how hard they work to strike that balance and make sure that the environment's protected, make sure that everyone has water that they're going to be capable of using without harming that environment. And so that's the reason that, I felt necessary to kind of get on my soapbox here a little bit today.
I really do appreciate those, because I have seen a huge change the last 8 years that I have been. And I appreciate, we are not perfect. Nobody says that we are perfect. We, the board members, are not perfect. I have a small organization, and by any means that we're not perfect. But Water Management District is now amazing. And to this day, everywhere I go, I get huge compliments. What it means, what the staff do is their willingness to work with everybody. Every agency is every person who wants, last night I was a place and somebody came and says, listen, I had an issue within 24 hours, your staff took care of it. So what more, can we ask for? But you have to be also open-minded. If there is an issue, you have to listen, and that's our job. But you know what? I really appreciate you taking a stance for your staff. So I thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Mr. Browning.
Yes, Mike, I think it's a great presentation. In fact, I'd like to get a copy. I think I was looking to see if we had it. I think we need to do more of it. I'm quite sure we do things wrong, but we do so many things right. And if we don't say it, who will?
Exactly.
So I'd like to have it. It was good. It was real good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, have we thought about suggesting people they do use HVAC ductwork as pipes for water? That might help. Maybe you guys aren't thinking outside the box.
We are certainly open to any suggestions, and we'll review anything.
Ron?
So the sentiments is very good. I just had a question because it made me think about something else when I was reading through this. When a contractor goes in and does a subdivision, we always had to do a dewatering permit for the dewatering of the retention pond, but the and that is a consumptive use construction type permit, or an NC, whatever the heck. But when the contractor goes in and throws a sacrificial sock drain in when he's laying sewer that's deep, and that's always an 8-inch pipe or not, is that a separate permit that's needed? Because I don't know if that's ever really happening in the real world right now.
Do you want to address it? That we have dewatering permits that people can get here at the district that are for those short-term construction dewatering permits. If they're over a certain amount, then they have to get a full consumptive use permit from the district.
Gallonage or size?
Gallonage.
Because there really no gallonage really affected, so that's no problem. I was just curious because I was thinking that you were presenting, when I started reading this, it looked like you were presenting this as sort of the way the rules work, and I didn't know if that permit really, the contractor really doesn't file that. You do file one for the subdivision, but it never really, because the contractor chooses the way he's going to dewater.
Any other questions or comments? Good presentation, guys. I appreciate you setting the record straight